what's going on, family? Listen, we've had a lot of amazing guests on the show, and perhaps you may have never ever listened to those episodes. So we wanted to present a new segment called SONW Classic, where we go back, we revisit those iconic conversations, and give those full episodes back to you. Sit back and enjoy this week's SONW Classic. The one and only Tina is on the show today. How you doing, Tina?
I'm so happy to be here.
Listen, you are somebody that, when it came to us, it's like, yo, we can get Tina on the show. We can get Tina on the show. I'm like, listen, I got some questions. Right now, somebody is listening to this. They're watching this on YouTube. They know they have the information that could be something that could be so significant to these companies. What would be your advice to them and to saying, look, this is what you should be sharing?
Yeah, I think so often, right? I don't know where we learned this lesson that we should try to reach everyone, that we have to have something for everyone. No, you don't. You need to have something really specific for a really specific group of people and be the best at servicing that group with whatever it was, right? So at the time when I started talking about youth marketing and then eventually millennial marketing, if I had tried to go to Gen X, to boomers, to all these, like I would have lost, I would have diluted the value, right?
Mm,
Even though when I started as a youth marketer, it was not huge or growing the way it grew when it became about the millennial generation, right? That was a phenomenon, I think, at the time. Any of us who were in youth marketing in the late 90s did not expect that explosion to millennials, right? It was a
mm,
natural step for me because I had been studying this demographic for 6 or 7 years to expand. Um, but I didn't go into it saying, you know what's going to happen? This niche market of mine is going to blow up. No one anticipated that. I owned the niche, and then the niche became more relevant. And I think for many of us, it's really owning that niche. And then if that niche becomes more relevant, you have that opportunity to grow. But also, it's also figuring out how do you own your business if that niche doesn't grow?
mm.
You can still have an incredible business owning your niche because guess what? You're not going to have marketing costs to market to any and everyone. You're going to be really specifically marketing to a very specific person or customer. And so getting to know your customer is incredibly important. My customer was really made up of a very select group of CMOs and marketing teams, and it meant understanding what their pain points were,
Mm.
understanding what kept them up at night. That's always the question I used to say, what keeps you up at night? What is the question you cannot answer? Because it would help me really understand where the problems were, not what they were just telling me, but really what could I come in and help solve. And so if I had tried to do that and be all things to all people, I wouldn't actually have had a specific solution to a very specific type of customer for my company. And so, especially when we're smaller, especially when we're, solopreneurs, or even before that, when we're still like our side hustlers, right? It's like you can't do everything and be everything. You've got to really focus. And that focus is where, you're going to have the opportunity to grow.
Man, this is good. Like I knew the episode was gonna be solid, but I didn't know you was gonna give us a master class, right? Like, let's get to it. We asked our listeners, all right, what are some good questions to ask Tina? And this is what some of the responses were. And I want to be sure that we ask this to you today. Why do you feel, in terms of marketing, why do you feel a strategy and having a marketing strategy is important?
Oh, goodness. I mean, this is the perfect question for what we're living through right now. What happens if TikTok goes away?
Whew.
What happens? If
A
you
lot of
have built your business around a tool, no one should do that. And by the way, I was on a board of a company who had built a marketing strategy around Facebook. And you know what happened? Cambridge Analytica. And then all those models around how much revenue they were expecting to come from running Facebook ads went away. And I said, Facebook is not a marketing strategy, it is a tool,
mm.
right? Tools can change, but you need to build a strategy around how you're going to acquire your customer. And too often people don't really know who their customer is. They go with a tool, and what does a tool do when it's nascent and new? It makes a lot of noise, right? So if you got onto TikTok before it became TikTok, you're able to grow, right? Think about the early Clubhouse. People in Clubhouse
Woo.
grew to a million. What are we? Who is talking about Clubhouse anymore?
Facts.
But I'm still talking to millennials. I mean, I have to reach my middle grade readers through librarians. That is who sells my books for the last 15 years because I carved out a niche in writing to at risk readers. So, who is
Wow.
focused on getting at risk readers to read? librarians. By the way, I didn't know that. That goes back to listening to your customer. I kept hearing one time my publisher said, we need you. Most people say no, but will you go to this librarian conference? They say that they recommend your books a lot to kids who are on the cusp of not reading. And I'm like, that's some data. I absolutely
Mm,
am going to go to this conference. And what did I do? Start talking to librarians and thought, okay, these are the gatekeepers to keeping my books in schools. What do they
good.
need? By the way, I also personally, as you know, with my core values resonates helping children who are on the cusp of not reading get engaged in reading. We're aligned, right, in mutually beneficial goals. What's the strategy there? How do I craft that? What does that look like? What are elements of my books that then become marketable, right? I'm always going to have a text message, blog, something that makes it easier for a reader who might not likewise be as engaged in other material. I'm going to find that focus point. But that's the problem with Instagram, TikTok. They change algorithms, ideas, and then your marketing plan is gone. But that's not a plan. If your plan is built around a tool
Mm.
that you don't own, that's not a plan. You're setting yourself up to fail.
Oh man, this is gold. I've had a lot of authors on this show. Seth Godin, you name it, you name an author, they've been on this show. I have never heard an author say that. Right, the fact and the strategy behind it is so genius, because it kind of reminds me. I come from the party world. It kind of reminds me of like an artist that was trying to break. Who did they go to? The DJs, right?
Exactly.
Like, so the fact that you went to the librarians and understood, like, oh, hey, look, they're gonna get these books into the person's hands that is the ideal reader. It's just crazy. So that was go. Let's keep it rolling. I like this. Right. Here's another question that the audience wanted to make sure that we asked you. Where should people, and we're talking about this right now, but where should people advertise their business?
There is no one place you should advertise your business. You should be telling me where you're going to advertise your business because you are so detailed into who your customer is. I used to go through an exercise at my agency with my team, and whoever the client was, I would say, let's name their customer. So I don't care if it's like Shamika likes A, B, and C. Darren does this. I want you to speak about these people so clearly as if they're friends because you are so detailed and you've really honed in on how we're going to reach them, right? It was an exercise really built around discipline. If you are not talking about your customer where you're like, he would never go there. He's not doing that. He's spending his 5 to 7, PM time doing A, B, and C. If you don't know that, then you don't really know your customer. And then you're just generalizing, right? And that means early on talking to your customers. How did you find my business? What is interesting to you? That research and how they get to you is so incredibly important. And a
Mm.
lot of times we just blow past that because we're trying to sell you something, right? We're not listening to how we fit in. And so then we can't craft a marketing plan because we actually don't know our customer. We know what we're trying to sell someone. We don't know who is actually going to be the person to buy it.
When a brand is growing, though, like when a brand is really, really growing, like what should an ad campaign do?
Oh goodness, this is a great question. So I like to tell clients when you really have mastered your initial demographic, like who you're trying to reach, if you have an expansion plan, once you're like clockwork, the ads are working, it's converting, everything is working like magic, that's the time to go to your second demographic, right? And
Ooh.
we probably, if you think about our businesses, I could tell you three distinct customers that I want it for Elevation, right? My new
Mm-hmm.
brand at Target. When I
Mm-hmm.
created Elevation Tribe as the platform, I had four. I said, I want entrepreneurs, I want side hustlers, I want small business owners, we call them SBOs, and I want mini moguls. And for each of them, I could tell you how much money they need to make in those categories. So we do, because you need a metric to measure when someone is moving between
Mm.
categories. So we're very clear on a psychographic, right? I didn't tell you how old an entrepreneur was. I could
Nope.
definitely tell you entrepreneurs could be people my mom's age who are empty nesters, raised their kids, and now are in this really amazing place of like I'm doing me, right?
Facts.
Um, that there's not just an age there. Or you could be, someone in high school who has dreams of owning a business and you're still in that psychographic. But you have to know those personas. You have to understand how much of your time you want to dedicate, right? There's the one you could own. So I thought about myself and I'm like, well, I'm a small business owner. So I for sure can own the SBOs, right? I want to attract the entrepreneurs. The side hustlers are interesting, but might take a little bit more time and attention to convert. And maybe I need a higher end offering for mini moguls, right? They're making over
Mm.
300K in their businesses. But that small business owner, I'm in that sweet space. Or sweet spot, right? I can ultimately speak to them very authentically. I'm going to start there, right? And that
Yep.
is a healthy marketing conversation we should be engaged in as small business owners, right? Where we sit there and say, I know I can reach that person. My message will most resonate with that person. And then you should have that one that you're like, they're a reach, but if I get them, my business is booming, right? And then there's like, and this one's a little harder than the one I have now, so that's going to be second up at bat, right? So that's really how we should start to think with our strategy. We are taught, we know marketing is an art and science, but I'm definitely from a generation of marketers who were really into their art and things looking
Mm.
beautiful and things showing up spectacular. And we are in a time right now that is rejecting that, that is all about authenticity in a way that I'm sorry to tell your listeners pains me to my core. Not because I don't like to be authentic, but I like pretty things. And what I am being told over and over again is like, raw, edgier. I'll give you an example. I had two reels go out yesterday.
Uh-huh.
I have a book out. I'm promoting the book. The first one was all of my photos from a photo shoot where I had a stylist and a makeup artist, and I thought it was everything, and a lot of people
Thought it
liked
was
it,
fire.
right? Then I put out another reel. My niece told me to do this. I have a 13-year-old niece who's like a TikTok star. So she tells me,
Mm.
Tina, just like when your makeup artist is starting to do your makeup, just start talking to people. I'm like, while my face is being worked on, just talk to people. I did it and
Mhm.
she was right. Converted more people. I'm like, what? More
Mhm.
people want to watch this unfinished thing, which, and I knew as a marketer, right? I coined a term, goodness, over a decade ago called cake baking, which was the idea that
Mm.
people were more interested in the process of baking a cake than actually eating the cake itself. And that
Mm.
was a huge shift in marketing. Um, we kind of lived through that. If you remember the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
all we remember from that movie is every Us Weekly cover about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, right?
Yep.
Where it was more about the story of everything that had happened behind the scenes on this movie than the movie, which is actually a really good movie. But that was when I realized, like, this is changing. There is something changing now when we are not allowing a studio, which is a very powerful marketer, to serve up what they want. We have decided to reject that and say,
Mm.
I want to know where you bought your eggs. I want to know who provided your milk. Like, we want every scandal if the milk truck, but like, we wanted to know all of those things. And so, you know, 10 plus years, many years later, I still have like a little bit of a problem with the cake baking, but I'll tell you, it's the biggest thing happening right now. People
Mm.
are so sick of inauthentic people and inauthentic ideas and just a whole bunch of BS that they're like, I just want to see you stripped down, taking your makeup off at night, right? Like that's just where we are, where people are like, I don't want glossy, over the top marketing. I just want you to talk to me
Nope.
as a person. And so a lot of us, I think, have to relearn how to have those conversations. And to be fair to some of us classically trained marketers, like we are trained to uphold and build brands that are worth billions of dollars.
Facts.
And that is very different. You've got the Pepsi market, right? All these people that we think of as marketing geniuses in our industry. It
Mhm.
is very hard to then take some of those brands and say, I'm just going to throw it out there and just let you see whatever behind the scenes. Like that's not even how we're trained. And so it's an interesting adjustment, but I think it's definitely what potential customers want. And what I love about marketing is you have to do what people want and you have to give them what they're asking for. They have dollars and those dollars are votes and they're worth more than anything. And so you got to do what people want you to do.
Yo, what you think? I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I want to know what you learned. So if you wouldn't mind, would you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast on your phone right now? Upload to your Instagram stories, tag me at Shawn Anthony _, and then let me know in that Instagram story what is one thing that you learned. I love hearing from you, my listeners, thought leaders, former or current students all around the world. Let me know, and while you're doing this, go inside the podcast app, subscribe, leave a 5-star review and a 5-star rating. Again, this helps us reach more people. And if you want to be a part of this mission, helping us change the world one person at a time, it makes a massive difference by you leaving a review. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week. And remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.